welcome and thank you for attending. It's great to have such a turnout in the wake of mid-reviews and things of that nature. My name is Jason Kentner. I'm an assistant professor in the landscape architecture section here at the Knowlton School of Architecture. And it's my pleasure tonight to introduce Michael Blier as this evening's Baumer lecturer. It's great to have Michael here. He is the founding principal of Landworks Studio in Boston, Massachusetts. The firm has been recognized with numerous awards, including receiving the 2010 Honor Award from ASLA, the American Society of Landscape Architects, for their project for the Theater Group Retreat in Western Maine. Michael spends his time primarily as a practitioner, but has always had connections to academia, both in his own practice, but also in the people that he employs. He really welcomes their participation and engagement with us in the academy. This evening, as part of the Spring's lecture series and topic of precision, it's interesting to have any landscape architect in this field, but I think Michael is a particularly interesting person to include in that. I think the idea of precision in landscape is certainly attached to craft and building the way you might expect it to be, and you will see that certainly in the work that Michael presents this evening. But you'll also see a range of scales, and I think here it's really where his aptitude and his firm's aptitude with landscape and the precise crafting of it at all scales is really most apparent. Precision comes across, I think, in how they deal with the specifics of context and site, and ultimately how they deal with the strategic capacities of landscape and how they're made at any scale. So it will be a great and generous presentation this evening. So please join me in welcoming Michael Blier to the Knowlton School of Architecture.
All right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me with this thing? No. 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 Okay, can you hear me now? Yes, kind of? I'll be careful. No? Okay. How do I do this? This is yeah. I want to just preface tonight's discussion. I would like to loosely couch it as a discussion for a couple of reasons. One is that it kind of de-emphasizes the pressure that I feel standing in front of a room full of really smart people, but also because it couches the work in the kind of context in which it was first conceived. That is, as in a kind of a group studio setting, through which all of the decisions get made and ultimately, hopefully, built. So tonight I'm going to show a few projects that have been recently completed. One that is near and dear to my heart that has been an ongoing work for some period of years, and then move into work that we haven't really shown anybody, work that is not on the website, work that is in progress, and work that represents a kind of a testing ground for application of, too much bass?
Yeah, too much bass in that.
Anyway, which is our first and latest, greatest attempts at applying some of our lessons learned at a larger scale. So I thought I'd first start by just talking a little bit about the underpinning for some of our work. We basically want to build. While the model of a design firm getting a start on the strength of a single large-scale commission, a competition, is an exciting one, for me the approach to office making has been quite different. While the desire to work at a regional scale and even an urban scale has always been there for me, the knowledge base, requisite skills, and professional experiences and general prowess within the world of public process by which I would ultimately approach those important projects were undercooked. Instead, I've taken a rather circuitous path toward practice, more of a gradient, a gradual refinement, testing, observing, testing again, accepting commissions that would address underlying interests in urban systems, public realm, ecological performativity, environmental responsiveness, weatherization, and climatic activity and artistic voice. Consequently, our projects have been, for the most part, growing in scale and complexity over time. Challenges increasing, team structures and collaborative nature of projects expanding accordingly. Each project has informed by the hardcore lessons of the previous work. And over time, which is the goal for me, each project is increasingly less reliant on speculation and hypothesis that's so risky in the public realm these days, but clearly prevalent in many contemporary works at the moment. So the projects loosely follow a trajectory of scale, but tonight they're not in a chronological order. While I find it necessary as a course of practice to begin with site-scaled work, focusing mainly on projects that provide a balance between conceptual rigor and design interests, the challenges in actual sites, clients, budgets, and materials, and climatic realities, that the true magic indeed is in the observation that the actual process of growth is not linear. Yeah. Feedback. I can try. It's not the kind of feedback we want. Is that better? Is that better?
Is that better in the back?
Okay.
How's that?
Hello? Hello?
Better?
Okay, how about if I speak louder? Sustainability, like what is sustainable? What is a sustainable landscape? In our work, cultural buy-in to work is more important than stormwater collection, reuse, and renovation. If people don't go there, if people don't love it, it's not going to matter. And so for us, the challenge has been finding a link between what makes a landscape stand the test of time relative to this idea about ecological responsibility. I think about 19th century parks and how they still resonate today with us and why that is. And the fact is that they operate at so many different scales. They provide an abstraction at an experience level that allows us to envision and imagine our own world within the city, nature, and our own idea about nature in the city. Whereas right now, I'm not sure exactly what it is that sustainability is bringing to us in the form of a language for park making, let's say. Site specificity. To erase or to begin again, to remake or tweak. Part of the challenge for us is in the balance, collecting as much information about this place as possible in advance of knowing. But the aim is always to achieve robustness and the creation of memorable and relevant places. Unique conditions as a culmination of a calibration between what it is that's being proposed and what is that exists before us. What happens, the site beyond the site. What is it like to approach a site? What is it like to be in a site? And how is our intervention legible? And why is it relevant? What about a formal language? What about an intensity? Like, what about materiality in landscape? For us, the challenge, again, is about this relationship between a material and its context, in terms of its limitations, like what a material can and cannot do. What a material cannot do is sometimes more interesting and generative than what material can do. And then what is the relationship between the material, the detail, and the conditions of landscape, which are unique to landscape, that is change, weatherization, freeze, thaw, and all of those things. very kind of physical and visceral in nature, though there are certainly cultural and social components to this whole discussion as well, which inform ultimate design decisions. And then ultimately also there's this underlying component in our practice about creating environments for learning. But idea is that the thought being that ideas come from anywhere. They come from everyone at some point in time. And it's important to listen. We really strive to create an environment whereby we get value added back via a friendly discussion between two people, or a misalignment, even an errant misalignment of a piece of paper on a model can lead to a discussion and to something new. Our office is located, is located in Boston, Massachusetts. We started my office in Salem, Massachusetts, which is right about here. And it was our home for 10 years. We ended up coming to Boston as the office began to grow, and as our proximity to other team members became more demanding, or more of a requirement. This is our office building here, and here's our office up here. So we sit on this crux of the city between downtown Boston and the South End. The Mass Pike is the big divide, and you can see the skyline of the city rising up to the north. And this is called, I don't even know what it's called, Shaman Avenue, Paul's Square or something. Again, this is just our shop, big studio space. And out our window, we actually get the sense, the differences between the downtown business district and this sort of hinge point of the expressway and the Mass Pike into what is called South Boston, which is an emerging area of the city and an area to watch in terms of development. Our space looks like this. It's a big open space. We work in studio format, much like you do upstairs. I think that what you have upstairs is beautiful, and it works. And it continues to work after you leave. And the way in which ideas are shared upstairs, they're shared here amongst our group. Again, it's a process, a series of people sitting around a table, kind of hashing out a model, and kind of advancing ideas as a kind of a collaborative. And this is the team. This is the team. And they elected to put me here. This is circa some many years ago. But what's really cool to note is this guy, Chris Lucius. He is my all-time, to this moment anyway, favorite OSU grad. He's been made an associate in my firm, and he's a really great guy. Going through kind of. Oh yes, this one is Halloween. This is we're in Salem, Massachusetts in this scene, so it was Halloween. I thought for tonight what I would do is talk about a few projects in a way, but to isolate these projects in categories. Now we all know that this is kind of a dangerous game, but I think it's important to, at least for the sake of this discussion, look at a way of thinking which defines projects per a kind of a strategy. The first strategy will be this idea about modularity, and modularity can happen as a kind of a building block, but it can also happen as a way to define surface and skin. And so we'll look at a project in that category. A second category is about seriality, the idea of a simple material being used repeatedly in different ways to create a greater range of effect. And so is geometry and structure coming together to create a certain kind of condition. I don't know about the verbiage in this one, except to say that we have a kind of a vein of projects which deals with ecological systems, varying ecological systems coming together at different points, meaning that there is similarities and conflict between different systems, which actually ultimately culminate in interesting design opportunities. And then the idea of this weave of ecology and program. I think we have another kind of series of projects in that realm as well. And then lastly, I wanted to show you a series of projects which are in their infancy, which have to do with more of at a more urban scale with systems and the growth of a big city, and how ways in which maybe some of the lessons learned earlier on get applied forward in these projects. Okay, so modularity can mean this idea about distortion and in this case, framing, where a system gets put in place which picks up on a patterning of a certain tree type in the distance that, around which this fence was placed in order to protect the tree itself. And so, or it could mean, these are projects that are ongoing, or it could mean an idea about surface or lamination that helps to define a way of moving through a certain space on a campus where people like to picnic and hang out. This project's under construction. Or an idea that could be more about material use in landscape, or material that's not typically used in landscape as a way to define an edge. This is a wall that is at the University of Pittsburgh that provides security against speeding cars into a research building. And ultimately, this is the project we'll focus on in this category. A small project, it's in Manhattan, it's at 205th in New York. Basically, it's basically a big old building, about 4 million square feet at the corner of 23rd and 5th. And the renovation was such that that this was all air handling units at the bottom of the well. And so the thought was, how can you take this building, which is internally inwardly facing, with skyscrapers to its left and to its right, and do something that would actually rejuvenate the central space, but also create a kind of a social condition. So here we are. Here's 5th. The Flatiron Building is here. Madison Square Park is here, and our building is here. Go through this quickly. It's here. Again, the building, so the inside of the courtyard was like this, where air handling units, rooftop ventilation systems of all sorts kind of found their home, but the section was like this. That's the section of the space. Couple of shots. So context in this case is a historic building, landmark building in Manhattan. It's highly protected. The stone on the inside of the courtyard was as protected as the stone veneer on the exterior of the building. And this is the sky frame, looking up at the sky from down below. An architectural program bumped up into the courtyard to create this stepping system. And so we thought, let's bring Madison Square Park into the lobby and up and through the building. And so we had this idea about a green band. And this is a later drawing, but an idea where this planted system could come out to 5th Avenue here, through and up and up and up again. Now, you notice this white sort of zone here and here and again in here as kind of in the middle. The strategy here was to allow for the envelope of the space to be legible and left alone, so that the historical building would be mostly untouched, but that the space would be transformed via this thin plate that we would slide through the whole project. So what you're looking at in reality is a moss bed, some planters that are sitting on top, and then this precast system floating on top of that. So the precast system folds up, becomes the bench. Construction photos show what's going on, that the system, the module is the module on the face of the building, but the benches are actually extruded vertically. Shop drawing of the same. A really cool firm in New Jersey did the shops and did a fine job. So it's a pedestal system. The scheme, however, began in the lobby. So we're in the lobby now, and our light cloud moves into the lobby with a shield at the back of the space and emerges out into the landscape at the start of the courtyard and ultimately moves through the space. So this scoring pattern moves along on the ground. This is actually not a completed photograph, this is a photograph of an incomplete garden. You can see it hasn't been finished. But the secondary score joints really begins to animate the ground and reveal the sort of the tectonic of the bench structure. So the ground plane simply, it's very simple. The ground plane folds up, becomes a bench. And the edges just kind of float. The vertical elements, the vertical is a cable system that moves up and meets the concrete on the next level and then moves up again and so on. So what you're seeing is the green and the green and the green. The lighting on the ground plane, cut into the ground plane, is mirrored on the inside of the building with the same kind of tube lighting that keeps up the same kind of angling structure so as to enhance the connectivity between inside and out. The next project I'd like to talk about is really, well, I should probably walk through this. Like, for example, this idea about modularity. This is a mock-up of a wall that we're having built in Taiwan at the moment. Or the project at Yale, where we're looking at a system of perforated metal panels that create a sort of a moire on a 5-story wall. Or a canopy that's under construction right now in Arlington, which picks up on a very kind of particular lighting condition that we have to deal with there. And shadow patternings play a role in the way in which the canopy itself is being constructed. But I want to talk mostly about this project here. And as it's just been completed, basically it's a system. I'll start from the top actually. Taichung, Taiwan, very dense city. Streets moving east-west, north-south, and our site is kind of here. It's a kind of a mid-block building. There's a tower here and a tower here. Our site, actually I'm going to go back one. Our site is actually a little sliver in between. We tend to get weird sites like this. We looked at other interesting Taiwanese landscapes. One of the hillside, about which they're very proud, and the reality of their cities and how they colonize and occupy these edges, but that they understand the limitations of the light and they exist within those spaces. This is our context. This is how we were hired. We were hired to come and look at this site. There's a long wall at about 5 meters by by many meters long. So it's a space that looks like this between 2 towers. It's a kind of a shadow study that describes the condition of light. We get very little, but when we get it, it's pretty cool. And the idea is also there's ambient light working from both towers, reflecting off one another, that we thought we could also optimize. So we came up with this idea. What if we had a module, like one of these guys, or maybe 3 modules? This one, that one, and that one. And if we could compose them in a certain way, maybe we could get an effect that would be useful. We thought that since the light condition of the space itself was very dramatic, it was either day or night. Dusk was pretty good too because we got the reflectivity of the buildings, but that we could actually achieve a system that would animate that would catch light with the different angles at different times of day, that would animate the alleyway itself. And so we went through a series of these studies to get to the right module, and we came up with something like this. So we have 1, A and B, 2, and then 2 variations of the third module. And we began to model and construct. And we made a drawing like this so that the guy's building it, because there's a language barrier, right? That the C sometimes looks like this and sometimes it looks like that, which means they just rotate the stone. And you can kind of squint at it and see the pattern, and the pattern is really about this moire that moves down the alleyway, like this. So in between the stone panels, there's also green planted walls that will be green planted walls. So each of those openings become opportunities for plant material to be plugged in. They would have a similar moire pattern. But the idea was really predicated on the scale of the human body in that space, that the wall would mitigate, the scale issue of the towers, right? As you're walking between these two, towers, that the wall would actually hold that human scale and provide a connection that seemed useful. So here it is, it's being constructed. So they're literally just stacking, you can see. It's pretty low tech. But the stones are all cut individually and brought to the site. And you can see already what happens. This is probably, I think this is at 10 in the morning, something like that. So with only 3 and a 4th stone type, the variation is actually quite remarkable in our opinion. The green wall starting to be constructed. This is a technique, this is a system, a green wall system setup established by a company in Taipei, and so far it's working quite well. The irrigation, it's internally irrigated, and it's a lightweight system, and it's relatively flexible. Sometimes it's a wet wall. Okay. This project, this next project, I think, this next category of project is really has started to kind of work its way into the fore as we move to larger scale projects. The understanding of large-scale ecologies, the design within large-scale ecologies, and the way in which different systems work, the way they're designed to work, the way you intend for them to work, and then actually the way they do work, which isn't always the same. And then to understand how and why there's that break between anticipated results and the results. And so, we test these ideas at different scales. Our competition from Madrid in Spain, a big urban park that was based on the renovation of Blackwater into an agricultural new urban center. We didn't win. We placed highly. We didn't win. Or in Worcester, Mass, we're doing a reclamation of a riverfront site, and which will become the new visitor center for Worcester. I work in Saudi Arabia, which I'll talk about in a moment, but I want to talk about this. This is the project to which Jason referred a few moments ago. this is a project that's near and dear to my heart, not because of the commission, but because of what it means and what it's given to our firm in terms of kind of an awareness about systems, like physical awareness about how things grow in landscape. It sounds kind of odd, but this is a project that did last year win this award, but we had been working on it for 10 years, maybe longer. We planted these trees when they were babies, right? It was really about a site, and I'll talk briefly about this. I want to get to the next section, but this is our site right here. It's about a 30-acre site in western Maine on a beautiful lake with these weekly rental cabins. And you can see, in order to make the weekly rental cabins work, in order to create recreation space, they cleared the property and they brought in roadways, such as they are, down to each cabin. And over time, it led to erosion. This is a more recent, this is circa 1995, probably. Open and bare ground. This property belongs to a New York City theater group as a summer home, a summer retreat. They're an incredibly environmentally savvy group and asked us to come in and figure out how to restore this property. Actually, what you're seeing here are stakes in the ground where the birch trees ultimately were planted. The site plan is really like this. The cabins line the opening here, here, and here, and here, and over here, and down in here. This whole area had been cleared, and all of the runoff was moving to the water like this, down, down, so that the lake was suffering. And so we were asked to really begin to think about how to repopulate it. So this is kind of the strategy. A forest, a kind of a forest, and a connection between the two. And then certain things happen along the way to address isolated conditions, like this huge swoosh through here of water every spring, down this roadway, through here, and down to the lake. Yeah, so that's kind of the direction of water flow and the idea, the relationship between the partee and the offending water issue. So partly it was about circulation, partly about topography, the two coming together to create a remedy for the problem, reestablish ecologies that have been taken away in the site, but as important, creating a sense of place and a center for the theater group for the summer months, that they go there and actually they understand the difference between nature and a kind of a designed landscape, and wanted to embellish that. So the section of the birch grove, the trees after they were just planted, kind of growing, 1999, and now. So we didn't remove any trees to plant the birch grove, but the contrast of the birch grove to the pine, this parent pine forest, is really what makes really makes it legible. And the decision to use multi-stem birch trees rather than a single stem allowed also for the complexity of the grove to contribute to the sort of ambiguity between is this an artificial grove, or is this an extension of the forest? There's kind of the dialogue going on. The spine, the circulation spine, moves through the grove, slightly elevated above the grove. And here you see the birch grove, what it's doing. It's basically moving away from the pine envelope to get light, creating a certain architecture to the grove which was unanticipated, at least by me, but is nevertheless something which now impacts my understanding and how I approach similar scenarios these days. One can imagine, that's great. That's a really interesting phenomenon. And now we know what happens over 10 years of time. movement up and down the slope happens through the insertion of this meander, and the meander allows water to shed left and right as opposed to running down the hill. The east-west boardwalk actually catches the water in the big field, but also allows us to interestingly engage the forests around it. The middle of the site is an opportunity where the pathway becomes a bridge. That is, that the recognition of the issue of water and settlement and catchment is capitalized to create the sense of a different kind of experience moving through. And this was taken this past summer, and what's really interesting is, is that sideways? There's that? No, I'm just looking at an angle, I can't quite see. That the landscape has taken on a patina that once you put this thing into play, this line into play, it's not the line in the drawing any longer. Now it's in play. Now the plants around it are having their effect on this pathway. The material begins to change, the composition begins to change. There are decisions that have to get made over time. How does one handle this? How does one incorporate this? So you can see what's happening. The barren, dry land is now not barren and not dry. The spruce grove at the other end, when we first planted it, looked like this. The field where that guy was standing is here early on. And we put in these small spruce trees like this. And we also sprinkled in red pine. Today it looks like this. So what's really interesting about this is that we anticipated the spruce trees to be, like cones, and the red pines were going to grow and lose their understory branches, so that we'd get this situation where we'd have cones and spikes and then trees. So that there was sort of a spatial sequencing there. What we learned, though, was that doesn't happen. In a grove, trees behave differently because of the differing light conditions. And that the pine have a slightly faster growth rate, but the two systems working together kind of stunt the pine. So that, the red pine anyway, that the spruce actually keep up. Now it looks like this. What's very interesting, and it's hard to see, it's a hard project to photograph. I show it to you knowing that, because it's important enough to show you in my opinion, because of the lessons learned. These are the red pine. These are the spruce. All of the lower branches died on both species, right? And so what we did was one summer, 2 summers ago, we went and we clipped off all the dead, right? All the dead branches we clipped. And we opened up a kind of an understory. Well, we walked away thinking that's pretty cool. We came back the next year, and the parent forest around the whole site of white pine invaded the space, just like this. So that underneath this canopy is this blanket at about 1 meter high, like monoculture, white pine, moves through the whole project. And so we had a decision to make. What do we do? Do we keep it? We all loved it. We immediately loved it. And we decided, let's do something with it. So basically, we gave it a haircut. And we cut paths through it. So now there's this, there's a network of paths through this weird forest of Colorado blue spruce and red pine and white pine blanket. They filmed a small, short film here that I think was probably it's still at the Whitney. But it's a very interesting and bizarre place. Very difficult to photograph, but now begins to. So we keep going back. We go for work weekends, and we modify the forest. There are view corridors through to the garden, to the different cabins, and then there are pathways cut. The birch, in this case, are volunteer. We left them. and the white pine volunteer, we left them. I think this is what the ASLA jury found most interesting, was the idea of a proposal which in figure has a kind of structure that seems isolated, like rigid, but yet in reality, like the trees that, like the London plains that wrap Bryant Park in New York, feel very differently than they look in plan. This has that same kind of feel. Just a few more shots of the Grove and our work weekend. So again, it's this idea of the social component to all of to most of these projects that also play a role. In this case, particularly so, in that we're all, when we're there, we're far removed from our everyday life and put together in this very special universe for a weekend or so. Okay. This next one has to do more with this weave of ecology and program. Whether it's this is a LEED Platinum project at Harvard University, or this highway project that we're working on. It's under construction on Cape Cod, linking Hyannis to Route 6, which is about reestablishing an ecological corridor after the miserable expansion of a highway. Or this one, an invited competition still pending in Abu Dhabi, which is about a new city center. So here's Abu Dhabi, and here's our site for the competition, a whole new city in a big, what they call Central Park, which is literally 3 times the size of Central Park, I think. So we began the project by thinking about ecology and thinking about how in the world can we establish, a park in a setting like that. What does it mean? And so we began to look at, of course, the really simple and tried and true kind of environmental conditions of the site, the heat being, of course, the most critical in this region. And we came up with a strategy of thinking about a way to insert, using the section of the space that you just saw, to create really thickened landscape typologies within the space. Like if we could insert gardens within this space that would create very special moments, it would not only create a kind of a strong partie for the park, but also provide varied experiences for adjacent abutters. And of course, shade's a really important element as well. And so the scheme really rests on this idea about the section being expanded vertically, but then also extruded horizontally to create variation within a theme. So a kind of a modular system based that will utilize kind of different ecologies to organize the space itself. So this is about 2 kilometers in that direction. And it's predicated on the collection and use of water from the surrounding development, and that in that way we could actually sustain habitat, within the corridor, and that would become the kind of theme, if you will, of this new central district. And just some sketches. And that the way one engages this system allows to, because the city is set on a grid, the thought was that the oblique would be an important aspect to the design of the park. That movement diagonally through the spaces begins to enhance the sort of connectivity between the various landforms and landscape typologies. And that these typologies can exist at different levels. at the street, and then down below. So what we're looking at is a kind of a gathering area associated with a cafe to one side. We're looking up to the street level here. The earth form from above actually comes down to terminate this space, and the canopy above that is continuous above the whole space. This element here is a vertical wall. We're working with Ned Kahn on this project, that the artist, that the surface would be curtain hung down to the lowest level of the section of the city, and animate the movement of traffic below this level of retail. Just a few shots. And the last shot. Another project in the same category I want to show you, and these projects, again, I haven't shown anybody, but we're working now in Indianapolis on this new idea about a park. And so here's Indianapolis. Some of you probably know Indianapolis very well. Our site is here. The downtown is here. The mile square city is about right here. And this is South Street. And the Colts play here. Our site is here. The Lilly Foundation is here. And the site looks like this. Actually, by comparison to all the parking lots around it, this isn't so bad, but it's pretty barren. So we came up with a few initial diagrams that provide for Lilly here a kind of entry corridor, which they desired, but then just some early study models on how we could begin to design a park. And in this case, we created trays that would collect water from the parking, so that all the water from this area would flow onto these trays and create these conditions. Or another more nuanced idea about water collection, which would provide kind of a different idea about organizing the space. Ultimately, we sided with this one, thinking that more variation was required. This is a type of drawing that we do in the office. So this is my drawing. I do this one by hand, and someone else will come in and do some Photoshop work on top of it. This is a view of the second scheme, which is really showing much more of an overlapping system, kind of a thread of movement, threads of movement, linked with an ecological move of bioinfiltration and water renovation and collection here. But more than that, we really wanted to create a really thick section, lots of events, lots of tree cover, and just a robust landscape in an area that is otherwise pretty flat and pretty uninteresting. So as of a month, like maybe 2 weeks ago, this was the site plan, where we began to develop different programmatic bands, which began to kind of engage one another in different ways. An attitude about water, which would be collecting from the street and dumping into these chambers on either side, which would then begin to set up entrances to the park and event spaces and so on. And one of the models that we presented to the Lilly Foundation here, showing just that, these chambers, connections into the park, and so on. And some Rhino models of the same. What's really interesting about this project is the involvement of the museum. That in this case, ecology matters a whole lot to the city and to the developer of the site itself, and an artful expression of ecology matters a whole lot to the museum. And so we've been teamed with Rafael Lozano-Hammer and Jorge Pardo to find a way in which art really can play that role. At nighttime, there is envisioned a big market for the street. Just a few more images. These are undercooked images, but I wanted to show you process as well. And this is kind of how we're working in digital and in physical modeling, always, back and forth. How can you make the street, how can the street be part of the park language and still operate as a street is the question and is what we're working on now. How can biofiltration and water renovation actually be a compelling idea about a park? And we thought maybe if we had these cells, it could work. In the middle of the garden, botanical zone. There's a large gardening group in Indianapolis, and we're trying to accommodate a kind of an idea about a torque in the ground, which would become an opportunity for a variety of plant species to attract various bird life and butterflies and so on into the center of the park, to animate the center. There it is there. And wintertime use for us is a big one. We're now studying the insertion of an ice skating rink into the park in this zone here. There you go. And these are some studies showing the idea of the exchange between the ice rink and the earth form at this end. Different ideas. This is the present state of the ice rink and the associated Shake Shack. Again, I make models like this, while other people do these sorts of drawings. Okay. This last section, what do I have, like 10 minutes? 5 or 10? I just wanted to walk through a few projects because these are kind of all really detailed, kind of small scale to medium scale projects. We've been somehow selected to work with the Royal Commission of Saudi Arabia to explore a city called Jubail. It's an industrial city. It's at first glance a really kind of hostile place, although at nighttime it feels really amazing. New York has a certain skyline, and Jubail has its own skyline of stacks and towers and flaming chimneys at a monumental scale. Desalinization plants, factories, and desert. There are attempts to green certain areas to give amenity to the people who live there and people who go and work there. But in general, it's a very industrial city. It's the second largest industrial city in the world. And so present day, it looks like this. The old city is here. This is the Gulf, the Arabian Gulf here. This is the city as it exists now. The industrial component of the city is here. Airport, and of course, waterfront. In 2017, they're going to double the industrial component of the city. The airport stays. And there's the emergence of this other green space over here, or area identified as park over here. And then by 2030, the residential zone, which is here, will move to here. The people living here will be working here. Along with that, because this is a big industrial area, there needs to be a buffer. There's a buffer being planned between the residential and the industrial zone. So our projects are like this. At the moment, we're working here, right, at Dareen, on this little tip of designing a park. We're also asked to design a waterfront park in this zone, right? And also this new city center being planned for this zone. Another area of open space in this zone. This weird thing about 42 kilometers of highway, in Jubail. And then ultimately, the design of these buffer spaces and this big regional park, which which I'll talk about in a moment. They brought us together because of our experiences understanding the relationship between program and form and our ability to kind of interpret data, believe it or not. Water is the big issue. Right now they desalinate. The idea is that they're not going to desalinate, and they can't keep desalinating. It's too expensive. And it's just a crazy, it's a fool's errand. The idea is to utilize the increasing amount of human waste through treatment and use that water to sponsor the projects I just walked through, to create livable outdoor spaces and to flush toilets. So the water diagram is really complicated, but the water first gets treated and brought in to cool the equipment here, and then discharged through a series of canals to other parts of the city. So the water can be recycled through industry as many times as it needs to, but it gets cycled back for these projects. The first project is our park at Doreen here. We were asked to design a park on the eastern tip of the city, and design a series of, or a park which would provide a series of amenities. The scheme that we're looking at here is what was finally proposed and accepted. I can't show you here, and I can't show you here for reasons, for security reasons, but the park itself is really defined by a series of layers. And those layers are a neighborhood park here, a central art park here, and the creation of an ecological corniche that would reintroduce some of the plant materials that had been there but had gone away because of the treatment of the site. You can see the landmass under here is existing here, and it's all fill. It's all fill. So we're taking that land away, using the material as mounds, and also to create this corniche further out. So in plan, it looks something like this. Here's the neighborhood park, the art park, and the ecological corniche as the outer wrapper. And the scale is quite large. But so here you go, now, mound, water, and the connection. The eco-corniche has been designed to reestablish precious plant materials that have been grown here for a long time and will become a kind of a sanctuary area. In 3 dimensions, it looks something like this, where the corniche loosely responds to the art park profile, but yet it's distinct and connected only via footbridges, no vehicular access onto the mounds. The neighborhood park is emerging as a series of repeated elements that move along its edge. It's interesting. It's so hot there, and the parks are so big that you have to kind of provide repeat programs so that one doesn't have to walk so far to get to something. And so it generates a kind of a language. So now we're looking at the mounds. These are process rhino models, which explore the connections to the water, where there could be canoe landings and kayak launch pads. Again, an interest in the tectonic of the way things are connected and shifting and moving plays, some of the lessons we've learned earlier on are coming out in this project here. The Jubail Highway project, where we've just started working, establishing methodologies for essentially greening the highways using this reclaimed water. So we have a series of these different loops that we're connecting. So this is about reestablishing a kind of idea about connectivity and about how we're learning up front about the relationship, about our role as kind of trying to anticipate this growth and making decisions on what's really meaningful and what will endure. And so we've been developing frameworks, different ways in which different highways are designed, predicated on speed and width, speed of travel and width of lane, highways and interchanges. Bridge modifications. They have a series of bridges. We've been asked to think about what they might be other than bridges, and we're not sure how we're going to deal with this yet because the bridges themselves are actually quite okay. And then this idea about monumentality. They've given us their idea about monumentality, and we're trying to find a way that we can establish a sense of monumentality, but through continuity and through maybe more subtle approaches to linking the city, maybe speaking to the character of the city as it is now, but also as it will be in the future. And a more speculative drawing of what we might be able to achieve along there, both at day and at night. Okay, finally, I'll just breeze through this. Regional park, beautiful water body, Central Park, and you know this, right? So what do you do with that? It's a desert, and it's not just a desert, but it's inhabited, kind of. There are camels, there are Bedouin families that live out there, and this is what it looks like. And the government of Saudi Arabia wants to make a park, a regional park, a park that will like speak to their heritage and to their ecology. And so we go back to the water diagram, and we've been told that we get that many cubic meters per day of treated water with which to work. And so we came up with this idea, all right? This is half-baked, undercooked, and all, okay? This is a drawing made on a sketch table in our office that looks at a way of structuring water usage so that we can create a park that people will go to, but that doesn't suburbanize the desert, right? That's for lack of a better explanation, that's the idea. Because we know what we need to have, what they want us to have. We need a luxury resort hotel. We need a bunch of things. And we have to find a way to make it all work. And so this is a topography of the park. This is a giant low area here. And we thought it would be really interesting to occupy the bluffs around the low area, thinking that in the future our water supply might dramatically increase by the tenfold, where we could then actually fill in the lowland with actual standing water. Believe it or not, the numbers factor out that way. But we wanted to create something that wasn't dependent upon that kind of water usage. Something more of a drift. And so we came up with this idea of pods. And here's where I inserted the slides at the end, so they might be a little muddy. But the idea is that the water distribution system does this, and there would be feeds to these moments here. And what you're seeing is our first pass at circulation through the park. And so the thought was, as the water increases, the water availability increases, so too would the verdant areas, the areas that we would actually plant. And eventually, they would actually, yeah, I missed the culminating slide. They would overlap. And they would allow us this opportunity to create an idea about, the scale is really kind of enormous, right? A big hotel is actually the size of that dot right there, right? So the fact that these could be a system of connected ecologies moving through different elevations in and out of the wind, and there could be more remote systems for weekend campers and so on, I think would be quite extraordinary. And so we envisioned this, this idea that there could actually be an oases effect There could be this idea about moving into the landscape at night, which is a really important thing for the Saudis, and that it be well lighted also is a key. Also, the idea of cultivation played well and is an aspect of the program we're developing. The fact is that there could be an organic farm, a big farm on one side of the site that would, again, be a destination for the locals. Oh, sorry. I'm missing a slide. But so I'll go back one more. But the idea is, let me go back to the plan, that like reading the site, understanding the wind flow moving in this direction, understanding the condition of heat and light at these different elevations allowed us to come up with this strategy of organizing the site in a way so as to retain the desert, the authenticity of the desert, but also to create sort of moments of extreme lushness, if you will, in the desert. So the Saudi work I wanted to show you just to sort of let you know that beyond this building, people still kind of are speculating and are unsure and are imagining in different ways that like this. And so now I'll come to this one. This is from my office. It was taken earlier today in email just before the lecture. They're all part of the presentation tonight. So thank you.